All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the March 3rd, 2024 Carmine Street Metrics. I'm Wendy Sloan, here with my co-host Anton Yakovlev, and we have three terrific features today. Diane Moomey, David Rothman, and Adam Vines. So I'm sure we're looking forward to that. And we'll start with our open mic. And the first open mic reader will be Claudia Gary.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. I'm very happy to be here. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to read a poem called Arts and Crafts that was published in Expansive Poetry Online, I think last year. It has three little sections. Shading. Well, first, the title is Arts and Crafts. Shading. Before making a mark, I broke three rules. Snapping apart a darkly colored crayon, peeling one half completely, zero cover, abundant color, then turning it sideways to drag and swirl its width across the paper. Here was my shadow, yours, the universe without a star. Standing the crayon up, I drew stick figures. They too would need shadows. Finger paint. This kind of paint was only used in school, since we already knew too much. Mosaics, gold leaf, tracing, creating plaster casts of hands and feet when we went to the beach. Connect the dots, coloring, sewing cards, and finger paint, those were just busy work. Mother knew art, and I knew it was magic. And childhood revised. I never cut my fingertip on a stray blade, nor did I slip while chasing the good humor truck and bump my head on it. Good luck forever held me in its graces. Playgrounds, too, were friendly places. Mom went away for just 2 weeks to rest and study art techniques. Flowers bloomed on the balcony when she returned. Her memory remained intact. She held me near for decades to abolish fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next reader is Rob Wright. Rob, if you could unmute.
Thank you. This poem is inspired by a series of photographs done by a friend of mine, Tom Goodman, where he had taken some police procedural photographs from Sydney done in the 1920s and reworked them. And the photographs are available on his website, which I can give to anyone who's interested in the chat box. Journey of the Mad Girl. The vision of the city came to me as I was led along the corridors, where on the other side of bolted doors I heard women cry out in misery. For children lost, being mad and poor, they drowned or smothered them in sleep, and sleep they did. For me, no one could keep the gift which lay beyond the shutter door, a city beyond the row of camphor trees, which glows so brilliantly beneath the moon as I walked out past the sleeping guards, now free, to journey through a night as bright as noon. Home at last, I stretched out on a bench to sleep and be kissed by laughing men with blackened teeth.
Thank you. And next will be Daniel Klawitter.
All right, thank you. So this poem I'm going to read is from my chapbook called The Misuse of Scripture. And it's a Hilbertian sonnet, so a sonnet form invented by a great poet and I think friend of many of us that are on today, Ernest Hilbert. And this poem is called In Sickness and in Health. There are some things we simply can't sustain. Endurance of the will is not always sustainable. But what on earth can possibly have permanence? And still, The heart continues to woo the brain despite all attempts to explain the unexplainable. You are the center of my universe, contra Copernicus. If I could take your suffering away, I would, bearing it in my flesh as a substitute. Stigmata, penance, burnt offering, and sacrifice. So much in this life, wife, is poorly understood. But love, though under duress, is never destitute. Even in the face of hell, it hopes for paradise. Even in purgatory, it yearns for heaven. Even in this hospital that burns like Armageddon. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much for that. That was great to have a Hilbertian sonnet.
This
Yeah.
poem, fairly recent, it's called Open and Concealed Carry. My father went to war and flew like ancient gods. My battles were only pretend among young boys. Our cap guns went bang. Air rifles went puff. We wore coonskin caps and killed hundreds of people indigenous to the land and Mexicans reclaiming the Alamo from invader slavers. We killed many Nazis, Red Chinese, and cowboy bandits who robbed banks and rustled cattle. We were wounded or killed too, many times. I clutched my chest and fell dramatically the short distance to the grass. I've escaped the real wars of all my days so far, drawing a high number in the draft lottery for Vietnam. But now it appears a next war may not be easily escaped. Guns are all around. You've heard the talk. So-called militias are outright insurrectionists. Psy-op fantasies spun out of dark money blare out of television, feed news, meaning newest lies, into electronic devices in everyone's pockets and purses. The oldest themes of race and patriarchy and brute authority stir dark enthusiasms, telecast in living colors as horrific plans, killing dreams. It's both open and concealed carry. The elements of native and slave oppression, of people in arms with slave patrol militias, emerge from history's well-kept shadows as ghosts of tragedy still unfolding. How shall we sustain our better hopes? Thank you.
Thank you. So our first feature is Diane Moomey. Diane is a poet from California, also an artist, a watercolorist. She lives in Half Moon Bay, lucky her. And she co-hosts her own reading series, which is called The Coastside Poetry. Her work has appeared in many journals, including MacGuffin, which I'm not familiar with, also Light, Think, Mezzo Camine, Talk, sounds interesting, Caesura, and Red Wheelbarrow, and of course others. And her first poetry collection is Make for Higher Ground. It's available on Amazon or from barefootmuse.com. That's Barefoot Muse Press. That's, of course, Anna Evans Press. And actually, I reviewed Make for Higher Ground. I think it's a great book. I reviewed it on the Mezzo Camine journal website, so you can find it there if you're interested. And it is an interesting book. Her second book, which is called Sourdough, will be published by White Violet Press, of course, Kelsey Books, this summer. So Diane, let's see.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I should wait. Okay.
There you are.
Thanks so much for having me. Sourdough, applejack, and the good vinegars that have places at our tables. For all of these treats, wild yeasts make the starter. Wild yeasts that drift on air currents and land here, land there, Then each batch may mother the one that follows. My first poem today is from an earlier collection, Make for Higher Ground, and has seeded many of the poems that come after. 40 Days. From deep within the rows of August corn, a trill, vibrato, every other living voice is still for just a breath. Entangled verge beside the field, in trees, among the ears, cicadas well concealed. Then locusts recommence their creaking, leaping, sticky feet rebound off stems of thistle, chicory, and me, bare-legged deep in milkweed. Blackbird's note. I open woody pods, set flossy seeds afloat. On porches, grandmamas weave ribbon out and in and out of eyelets, stitch and snip, pin, unpin, for owners of curly-headed dolls, yards of lace. They're fastening the ends around the tiny waists, while grandpas speak in adages, chaw, lament the fish that got away. Ay up, and without a pause it's circling, as geese fly south and north again, and summer follows summer, bringing forth another incarnation of this very thistle, cricket, chicory and milkweed, ribbon, whistle of blackbird and of train, the wispy rows of corn, the grandmamas, the homilies, all circling, adorn this life. Cicada trills again from spot unknown. Ay up, it's 40 days till frost, grandpa's intone. Thank you. This next one comes from a time in a rented farmhouse near Lake Ontario. Hens, north of Toronto. The mailbox on the corner is broken free. Its bolts are sheared, the metal bent away. With legs askew, it slides across the street upon its back. An empty street is glazed with sudden ice, is filling with debris that's whirled by turncoat wind from off the lake. You ought to stay in town tonight, she cries. The hen house door is open, I reply. This morning, warm and gold, I'd fed the hens and, fooled by forecasts, left their door ajar. Oh, just a couple hours to visit friends in town, have lunch, no need to take the car. I'd time to meet the bus at driveway's end, to read a book, embellish my memoirs. But as we lifted glasses of Bordeaux, the street beside our window filled with snow. By the time dessert arrived, that weather settled in. I see the brooding boxes full of straw, one per hen, their nether corners open to the wind, see foxes coming to investigate, see feathers bloody in the snow. It's 3 o'clock, says she. Come stay with us by candlelight. No one will be coming home tonight. Traffic lights are blinking yellow, bitter wind, Edward Hopper Street. Then objects loom, sudden. My bus disturbs the litter curbside. The papers said a window flexed from out its frame that day, smashed to glitter where I'd stood. I'm seated now, vexed. Sunny posters of vacationers, mellow. We're behind the snowplow, flashing yellow. Eventually my lane, the borderline of town and country, driver downshifts. We're skidding, sliding, stopping. Both doors whine and open. Driver frowns at all the drifts. You sure you'll be okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine. The dog is here to meet me. 6 legs lift and fall beside the field where fireflies, asleep, endure. Snows above my thighs and wets my leggings. Be alive, alive. Don't let me find your feathers in the snow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A darkness underneath the trees, shadow of a fox. 11, 11, be alive. Now, open door, I step inside. Although I fear to find the still, cold breasts, the broken eggs and bloody feathered nests, I plunge my hand into the silent dark and find 11 feathered, beating hearts. This one is dedicated to the ones who got me through many a long, dark northeastern winter. Radio Man. Sometimes in late life West Coast sun, she thinks it was a dream being upstairs in her room under the roof in the old farmhouse they lived in for a couple of hard winters, almost in Canada. Winters when it got dark at 5 o'clock and the snow blew into the kitchen under the front door, and one morning there was an icicle hanging from the bathroom faucet. That kind of winter. Well, in this dream, or not a dream, she's got her parents' big old Philco in her room, metallic purple with a lighted dial. And when the needle finds the perfect spot on this old Westinghouse, she can catch the radio man, his honey, smoky voice just drifting her way up from Syracuse or down from Montreal, Chicago if the weather's right, or Detroit, and he plays blues and city music just for her through this old RCA, his smoky voice regaling her with tales about the songs, the singers, their lives, oh, their magic lives so far away from hers, but the signal drifts in and out on this old zenith. While downstairs in the den, beneath the antlered head of a deer and a stuffed pheasant, the old man would finger-pick his Gibson, falsetto Hank's Your Cheatin' Heart, and I'm so lonesome I could cry. And on the record player beside the yellow cabbage roses that paper the parlor, the old lady would listen to Carmine, loud, a Gladys somebody doing the habanera. And all that sound drifts up the stairs, so she keeps turning up the volume, and the signal keeps drifting off and on. She keeps on tuning and turning that Panasonic pointer just a hair to the left, a hair to the right. She's just following that honey voice around the dial. Oh, just following him all around that dial. And this is my final poem, First Date. No snow, but we've walked home from school, so it's springtime or autumn. The Rexall's on Fleming has red plastic stools at their counter of yellow and green, where you buy me a cherry Coke, 10 cent. For you, it's the 5 cent. 15 is the whole of your savings. We both are 11, and counting the time between birthdays, we find I'm the younger by 2 months. We empty our glasses with straw noises, amble to my house, no hurry, to visit the dog and the sofa inside our garage, with its broken down springs, an old couch that will one day belong to Goodwill, but is ours for today. So we jump, and we jump till the dog goes insane with excitement, till dust fills the air in our noses, till mother calls out that it's long past the 5 o'clock whistle and time you went home. Just one last bounce. You tell me you've never had such fun in your whole life. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Everyone unmute, please. Show our appreciation for Diane.
Oh, thank
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Lovely, really moving.
Beautiful.
I think we'll have a couple open mic readers before the next feature, and that will be Anton Yakovlev in a surprise and rare appearance.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for this really mesmerizing, really amazing reading, Diane. And of course, I'm looking really forward to hearing David and Adam. So this poem, it's a bit of an old poem, seemed appropriate to read today because in 2016, David Rothman and I were both part of this workshop by the late legendary poet John Whitworth at Westchester Poetry Conference. And one of the assignments that John gave us was to write a poem based on onomatopoeia, like as much onomatopoeia as possible. So this is the poem that came out of that assignment. It's meant to be a funny poem, but maybe not entirely. This is called Chatter. Your haunting chirping thwacked a chord with me. I don't know why. I hated it at first. Your ping-pong words before the howling tree wheezed through my collar. Oh, you were the worst, springing your wine, trickling your holy tears over the humming of such specious spite, it wasn't worth the croaking. Still, for years I've banged my head against your tumbling light. Buffoons guffaw over your anguished drones. Pissed citizens keep yelping about you, the way you bark inanely from your stones, a cackling, tick-tock, snap-crackle statue. You dunk your truth in dark that goes pop-pop, smooching with a rooming boink and blank and quack. No dying, though. Some elegance won't stop, not even when a soul dribbles to black. And so it hisses, this time-splattered song. And so it murmurs, this boom-boom of days. Your buzzing will go on after you're gone, putting us all in our pathetic place. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. Okay, next is Chris Brandt.
This poem is relatively new. It's called Absence, and it has an epigraph for Tina, Black Rain, Cesar, Barbara, David, Linda, Jack, and all the rest. Their absence fills us more and more. The comrades who are no longer here have one by one slipped through the door. One lost his stealth in the roar of war. All direction gone, he lived in fear. Such absence fills us more and more. A sharp brain dulls, thinking now a chore. Eyes englazed that once were clear, but even blind, they find the door. So many gone to that far dark shore, we call for them, they do not hear. Their absence fills us more and more. For some, life became a painful bore. Some faced the worst with love and cheer, but all alike slip through the door. Far away, we hear the dark night roar, a tsunami growing nearly near, and absence fills us more and more as one by one we near the door. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris. That's lovely. Okay, we'll move on to our second feature, who is David Rothman, known to many of us and has read for Carmine Street Metrics before, though quite a few years ago, in person in New York, right before one of the Westchester conferences. David Rothman, well, He's been fortunate enough to have studied with many distinguished poets, Mark Strand, Derek Walcott, Shamus Heaney, Zeslav Milosz, and Robert Fitzgerald, among others. And he's published 6 volumes of poetry. And of course, his poems have appeared very, very widely. And he was the winner of a Pushcart Prize in 2019. So let's just name a few places where he's published: the Atlantic, the Formless, the Gettysburg Review, the Hudson Review, the Kenyon Review, Light, Measure, Poetry, and the Threepenny Review. Okay, so without further ado, of course, first I have to find you to spotlight you. There you are. David, please unmute.
I think I am unmuted.
You are.
I want to thank Wendy and Anton and everybody else involved with Carmine Street Metrics for inviting me to read. This is one of the vital series of the country. It's great to see so many friends, old and new, and people I know by name only. Stroking out. It takes a while. First, speech slurs, but you can still write. Then the writing goes, but you can still convey a yes or no by squeezing someone's hand. Then that goes, and there is a frantic motion, the eyes open, but it seems unseeing, though there's still a sense of need, a final urge for dignity, not to wet the bed. Then at last, all motion ceases, but for chain Stokes breathing. And during this time, doctors say the mind stays clear. I held her in that final night, sleeping together one last time, drifting under the quiet, watchful care of friends, accompanying her as far as I could go, spooning at death's door, my face buried in her hair one last time, holding the woman whose body had given both of us so much before it was consigned to the flames. Who was she? Who was she? She was complicated, that's for sure. A beautiful fury because tortured, graceful with a temper. Cats adored her, sensing elegance with claws. She was herself, yet claimed she didn't know who that was. So I'd try to tell her as she wept. You're Emily, I'd say. You know, wife, mother, sister, daughter, dancer. Jazz is not your thing. Pilates is. You know, the life you chose in this small town is full of our boys, mountains, flowers, good friends, snow. And that MA will make more possible. Every loving word sank like a stone. You're lying, she would yell. Leave me alone. Congenital melanocytic nevus. An epigraph from Medline Plus. Giant congenital melanocytic nevus is a skin condition characterized by an abnormally dark, non-cancerous skin patch composed of pigment-producing cells called melanocytes. Affected individuals may feel anxiety or emotional stress due to the impact the nevus may have on their appearance and their health. When melanoma occurs in people with giant congenital melanocytic nevus, the survival rate is low. Grab my ass hard, she'd say when passion struck. That gorgeous dancer's ass I loved, and she detested for its birthmark. Mere bad luck, she saw as fate, judgment, and destiny. It never meant a thing to me. I'd kiss it. She'd say, this thing is going to kill me, Dave. I'd say, the hell it will. I'd say, I'd miss it if you didn't have it, as she shaved. I look like a gorilla, she once yelled, and wept, her rage so fierce it made my weak words melt. That night, her hot tears drying as she slept, at last I understood the way she felt. Congenital melanocytic nevus. I never thought it meant that she would leave us. A reminder. She made life in her body, and it came into the world. First Jacob, after gripping hours of hard labor, reaching for his name, transverse and wrapped umbilically, dripping celestial cheese and gasping blue for air up into good apgars when cut from her. Then, after 7 years of secondary infertility, big Noah, sure of himself from the start and reaching to the nipple the way memory calls out to love, reminding me of what is true and beautiful and good beyond all doubt, beyond her life and mine, beyond our death, embodied in each sudden, sweet first breath. An endless list. The way you held a wine glass with such dancer grace. The birthmark on your back, a death sentence. Your middle name, desire. The cancer in your brain. Your love of sleep, my breath upon your knee. The indescribable smell of your hair. The anger at your food. Your farewell to our sons. The notebooks full of sorrows, longings, hopes. Your attitude turn, sheesh. Your total lack of talent with a joke. Your love of beach and mountaintop and flowers, chocolate, shoes, the random smoke, your yoga, atheism. Please, God, stop. It is an endless list. I can't go on. There are no verbs. All gone, all gone, all gone. To embrace me, she inclined. Emily and I are in bed. We are naked, but it is not sexual. I am flat on my back. She is on top of me and we are kissing. It is loving and gentle and so beautiful. I can smell her hair. It is sweet, as always, just to hold her, to feel her against my skin. My arms are wrapped around her. I can feel the length of her firm belly and her legs, and my warm hands are slowly moving up, around and down, are rubbing and caressing her lithe back, deadly birthmark, moles and all. But something seems strange. She seems a bit uneasy, distracted, distant. Well, nothing too strange about that, I tell myself. I am calm, drowsy. She was often preoccupied. She was often depressed, often dark. But today is different. And then suddenly I realize what it is. You're not really here, are you? I say. She looks me deeply in the eye with indescribable sadness from an incommunicable depth, slowly shakes her head no, hugs me hard, and vanishes like smoke. The second date. The second date. The second. As the wreck of her once gorgeous body drifted in a dream toward death, I knew at that same moment our first kiss, the shoddy apartment where she lived, thus turned into not only her place, but the point in time from which she'd work the rest of her life out. The joys and sorrows, hard work, every dime we earned and spent, our sons, our faith, our doubt. And it came clear how then and there she'd made the most rebellious choice of her whole life, enthusiastically and unafraid to help a man learn how to love a wife. Though as I fumbled with her zipper and my fate, she laughed and said, I don't do that on the first date. To life. To life. To the lovemaking and the wine. To our sweet sons, the mountains where we walked. To every single flaw, both yours and mine. To every single time we ever talked. To the way you shaved your lovely legs, so flexible, 1 foot up in the sink. To how you ate only the whites of eggs. To your anxiety about each drink. To all of it. To everything. The kisses, the shoveling, the jokes you couldn't tell, the fights, the making up, the hits and misses, the blessed days when everything went well. To every minute, hour, day, week, month, year. I cannot say it all, but it is here. Beyond all song. I do not need to see God face to face. I do not need some sign, a parting sea, pillar of fire, or burning bush. This place works, and today is good enough for me. I ask for nothing. What would be the point? I need no messenger or go-between, no matter how dark night becomes. Anoint me now with loneliness, for I have seen whatever I was meant to see and heard what I was meant to hear. And now I live in that good, hard place. Praise is the bedrock word, as all that one might ask for has been given. She lived and died. Grief fits me like a glove. Blessed art thou, who taught me how to love. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, David. That was inexpressibly moving. Then our next open mic reader is Ellen Rittberg.
Okay, thank you. Mistaken identity. With ungainly kick, my elevated leg made quick work of you in equipoise high up on my front door. Firefly, you whose munificent green phosphorescence, jeweled wisteria excrescence, trailed down my shoe door. I felt horror as I wiped parts of you off, apologized, mistaking your black gay garb with jot of orange for another bug I thought deserving of unnatural death. Though who am I to say our species being equally or more destructive than that other bug and whatever it did or does? So unlike you, your otherworldliness worthy of praise, your raison d'etre to be gazed at nights, to be delighted at, in delectation of. O nature, pardon my hatred, in haste laying waste, but pleased that in combat my wingless form remained aloft. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to.
By the way, I just wanted to say thank you. I was one of your feature readers with Molly Peacock. I can't remember if it was 1 year ago or 2. Time has a weird way of collapsing itself during COVID, you know?
Right. Yeah, I don't remember when it was either. But
because I remember you and I know Anton. Yeah.
Okay. So next open mic reader is Denise LaNeve.
Thank you. I'm going to read Color of Dust. Dust has an indeterminate color, less striking than gray, more discernible than white. It acts as a repository for dead skin, shed cells, mixed with particles of dried loam, like layers of discarded dreams and honest memories, thrown away to decompose, which future generations will ignore or just wipe away. Ash falls heavier than dust. The weight of bone pulls it down. Its density is more opaque. I told my husband that when I pass, I want some of my ashes scattered to the wind, the rest buried. How so like me, always wanting to spread my wings and fly, yet wishing to remain tethered to this spot, as if I were a kite. The visible soil is bound to the earth, like an unborn daughter's heartbeat is bound to her mother's. It does not stretch to reach the sky, but instead is content to look after bryophytes, angiosperms, arthropods, even concrete cities and raging rivers. I look up and dream of transforming into dust, measured in nanometers, riding on the atmosphere's wild currents, alongside cranes, condors, and hawks. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And next is Paul Nash. If you could unmute.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. This piece is entitled Caught in My Eye. Focusing on that tree over there with the peeling bark, trying to remove dust particles trapped in my left eye. I see something crawling around the rim, and I can almost make it out as it circles upwards, round and round, doing loop-de-loops on my visual cortex, till it completely disappears from sight. But maybe it was never there, or it's actually here, not there, crawling out of my eye. There's no longer a tree or anything at all around me, except a WeatherTech floor mat beneath my body. And I remember I was once alive as I drift frozen in Elon Musk's cherry red Tesla Roadster, floating somewhere in space between Mars and Jupiter. They should have checked the trunk.
Thank you. And next is Harvey Soss. Harvey, could you please unmute?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a poem that the paint's not entirely dry on, having just put the finishing touches on, or at least I hope so. It's called Amazon's Best Buy, should you find yourself running low on thoughts and prayers. The supply of condolences at most retailers is dangerously low, going fast in the manner of specials such as barely there brassieres at a Victoria's Secret Black Friday sale, practically strapless and wrapped to go. As a favored expression of graveside etiquette, your T's and P's play hard to get, all current as all get out. And yet, school shootings continue to mutate faster than a virus does. The vox populi grows angrier every day. Workplace comeuppances visited upon upper management by those denied a raise, despite the latter's genius for stretching lunch breaks until closing, requiring some show of platitudinous sadness, as do failures of court-ordered mediation settled by one to the head of your ex. If you had invested wisely, as Goldman Sachs advised, in death and disaster, you could be retired comfortably when every perceived slight ends in a gunfight. Would violence's excise tax upon the living become so commonplace that even AI's obituary writer, shortlisted for the Nobel Prize, can't keep up with them? Now that the four horsemen of the apocalypse and Ragnarok jointly bear down on us, it's imperative to keep close at hand an apparently heartfelt display of grief and support. Thoughts and prayers as important to good standing as condoms are. And may I interject here a brief Q&A? Prayed out, can't think of a thing to say. Beyond your usual defense of the NRA, our words are there for you. Much as California psychics do, we're waiting for your call. You can rely on us to provide your gold rush nuggets of leave-taking insincerity, making you appear more golden than you are. Let our Rapunzels spin your straw man arguments for the Second Amendment into Hallmark cards, watermarked as ours are by artificial tears. Don't you deserve the opportunity to piggyback on a template of true feelings? Of course you do. And no one outfiddles Nero and Sons. Our thoughts and prayers, veritable chimeras of commiseration, are reusable. Just change a word or two here or there at the next mass shooting. And no one can doubt their genuineness or yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Okay, now gives me great pleasure to introduce our third feature, who is Adam Vines, Professor of English and Director of Creative Writing at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and also editor there of the Birmingham Poetry Review. Adam has published poems widely in journals, including Poetry, Kenyon Review, and the Southern Review, among others. And he's the author of 3 books of poetry that he edited, that he wrote all by himself. Luris, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Out of Speech and The Coal Life, which I have a copy of. And he also wrote 2 collaborative collections with Alan G., Day Kink and According to Discretion, which is interesting. Okay, I was fortunate to hear him read last spring at the Poetry by the Sea conference, where he was on the faculty. So please, Adam.
All right, thanks so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start off by reading a couple of older poems from my 2 first books. One I haven't read in probably over a decade. It's a dramatic monologue from Adam in Eden, not Adam in Alabama. The Cleaving. The lizard's tail is merely the devil's gambit. The moss unblinking, fragile eyes goggling from its flattened wings on birch and cherry trunks. The hognose's trick, puffing to strike, a hawser, a sheepshank poorly tied. Crouched leopards rippling their spots, swishing their tails, the scherzo from pharaohs fighting for teats, racemes of celosia, hosta, and salvia, all flaming colors. Even the beetles rolling their dung balls, dung pile, the chickweed fescue comprising it, the iridescent flies lighting, spilling, the plover pecking grubs, larvae from it, the organisms, fiddler worms reducing the mass to soil, the terse refinement, the compost, fertile dust from which I was conjured. All matter I thus renamed when cast from Eden. Abba, you should have pulled me from the void, drawn the translucent earth and frigid heavens, and from your reddened knee, where I would have grown lonely, imagining the platypus and the sloth's stone face and slow ascent, birthed Eve. This is the scholar's advice. I was fortunate enough in the I guess it was 2 10s to receive some grants to travel all over the country and in Spain and France. And I even went to South America to go to museums where I drafted poems, ekphrastic poems. And this is a collection of ekphrastic poems that I wrote from that experience. And this is one of those poems. Scholar's Advice, after Rothko's untitled Seagram mural sketch. The scholars warn, don't mistake it for a whore's door or heaven's lore for the poor, or, God forbid, boorish spores or s'mores, context, imposition, children, or a pompadour, orange paint weeping from its wick, or existential gore, or a haphazard pour of caution cone, or windows scored by a soothsayer drunk, or eyes pied, squared, then cored, or sores of an invalid left to flounder on the tile floor, which in my ramblings here I find my father, cord pulled while on the pot, embolism, a few minutes and gone. A hole within a hole of the hole, a thought without thought they would want me to see. Pander to my drama and despair, scholars. My mind fancies to open the door and to lie on the floor where my father was no more. I'll move on to my latest collection, Lures. This is another poem, an elegy for my father. My father's rod fishing the skinny moon in memory of Van Allen vines. While waiting on the Appaloosa bite, or channel cats would do, our fingertips plucking our fishing lines below the first eyes, twitching livers we had hooked and cast into the river's craw, my father would relax, the only time I witnessed this. He'd stretch his legs and dig his heels and match a lucky strike to life. He'd drag and exhale that the night had pocketed the moon. The cats would bite. We'd be all right. I'd dig in deep like him and hum a hymn I still don't know the name of, nor did he, I don't believe. But in that dark, that settling loam, and that Alabama clay, that hymn was ours, and God was there or not. It didn't matter. The bills were paid. He held his rod. He'd be all right. And this is the title poem for Lures. And it's an elegy for my best friend of 45 years who sadly died of a glioblastoma. Lures. Last summer's fishing failures dangled from trees. A rapala and jitterbug, a stand of privet paid for. Half-ounce jigs with rubber skirts and jelly worms with wide gap hooks on 10-pound test. We tithed with overzealous casts at bass. Then off we'd go, our stringers bare, to find a yard to cut, a truck to wash, so we could fill the tackle box we shared again. Today is 12-12-12, the Mayan end, and I, a country boy in Brooklyn for the week, will hail a cab for the first time and think of cows unnerved by fish we missed and shouts of shit that followed, and dawns to dusks and always back with you, my childhood friend. Our girls will never know that pond's deep hole a baseball diamond now fills, the city leader's bright idea, or how their fathers sitting in the bleachers on Saturdays a couple decades later can almost feel the stinging nettle against their thighs, the lunker largemouth sweeping the bed with her tail while plastic lizards jerk and drag across the third base line. Or how when we untrain our ears to baseball's cracking bats, and bitchy parents, called strikes and alike. We hear the peepers sounding off in oaks on down the way, our mothers' and fathers' voices calling us home, not too far behind or ahead. I'm the proud father of a precocious teenager who was also a precocious 8-year-old. And she used to ask questions of me all the time. And some of these questions were really difficult to answer. And this was one. Question from a bowl of beans for Mary. A bite of beans, a long milk draw, and then a side glance. What's it like to be a boy, she asked. Tiresias first came to mind, the mating snakes he struck, the female dead, his 7 years in women's flesh that followed. Didacticism at its worst, I thought, especially how to explain his lie to Hera, pleasures of the we and woo and homosocial bonds, the kind of myth an 8-year-old like mine would dig, then dig at me until I broke, explaining different parts in Dumbass Boys, the Birds and Bees. My wife was teaching dance that night and would have struck me blind if it had gone that way. Instead, I merely said, it ain't that bad. A lie, of course, then took another bite of beans. The penis seems to be a lot of trouble, she said, while looking down into her bowl. And once again, I thought, deflect. I could bring Nana into play. And how at 8, I told my class about my front tail, unzipped my pants to show them when they said I lied. Miss Walker's scream, the long walk down the hall, how Nana let me think I had a tail for years, until that day when I walked home and Daddy told me about the penis, the stiff-tailed ways. I knew it ain't that bad would hardly do for this. I said, you're right. It is a lot of trouble. Stay away. And this will be, well, 2 more poems. This is when I was 23 and thought I knew a little something, but didn't. The hipster pragmatist and the emo poet blunt their teeth after 3 bottles of Mad Dog 2020 and adequate sex. And this is a bookend rhyme poem on each line. Leaves are more than just leaves, arbitrary as the arbitrary letters that invoke them, the letters suspended, arranged, and again suspended like quivering arrows until bent for meaning like infinite sets collecting and scattering the infinite. Leaves are just that, leaves matted in a gutter, not matted by the gutter, and christened conceptual found art, a goodbye, some lame artist names the parts of its sum, not an island colonially clear-cut, not a snake eating its tail, not one anchored A damning the watershed of animus, not some eternal damning. Crosses are just that, crosses, electric chairs painted white, electric white like Good Friday is only white, while the walls of the church, the white while congregating in pews, loses interest in the sermon. Congregating crows beyond the crazed glass catch their eyes, eat a murder of crows, they think, then ask, who are these brothers and sisters of mine, I, we, they? We are more than just that, we, 2 quarks, dualities of light, we, 1, 2, blue haze before we burn blue. This will be the last poem. The Golden Years. I said the jasmine blooms along the fence. You set the cuckoo clocks to different times. The bird in the hall is 13 minutes slow. You devil some eggs, spread out the greens to dry. You set the cuckoo clocks to different times. It's Sunday, the mailman doesn't come today. You devil some eggs, spread out the greens to dry. You dress your childhood dolls in faded clothes. It's Sunday. The mailman doesn't come today, you said. Tomorrow we'll have chicken and rice. You dress your childhood dolls in faded clothes. You brush your hair, push back your cuticles. You said, tomorrow we'll have chicken and rice. Your sister called again. Your hands are filthy. You brush your hair, push back your cuticles, take out your book, ready yourself for bed. Your sister called again. Your hands are filthy. The bird in the hall is 13 minutes slow. Take out your book, ready yourself for bed, I said. The jasmine blooms along the fence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.